This past week, it was not easy to keep up with all the different stories about COVID-19. From new mask mandates to upcoming mask mandates, mask recommendations, vaccination requirements, you get the picture.
The question is, are mandates coming next? Mayor London Breed has this answer.
Yes, we are looking at mask mandates for both vaccinated and unvaccinated people.
My 4-year-old's starting TK at Oakland Unified School District in a couple weeks, and she's vulnerable.
We're exhausted by the politicalization of this pandemic, and that includes mask wearing.
From KCBS Radio, I'm Matt Pitman, and I wanted to catch up with one of our reporters, Matt Bigler, who has been on this beat. His week started on Monday in Oakland, where Governor Gavin Newsom unveiled his latest efforts to get more people vaccinated.
We're mindful of our responsibility to do more and to do better. We're mindful of our responsibility to lead by example as well.
I want to go back to Monday, Matt, and he did not pull punches in his language about, in his mind, why we're in this position, both here in Northern California, but really the country at large, and that is putting some of the onus on the folks who have chosen not to get vaccinated. Didn't mince words.
I think the standout that we talked about earlier was that he compared the unvaccinated to drunk drivers. He said a decision to be unvaccinated, to not get the vaccine, is similar to driving under the influence, because you're not only putting yourself at risk, you're putting those around you at risk.
You don't have a choice to go out and drink and drive and put everybody else's lives at risk. That's the equivalent of this moment with the deadliness and efficiency of the Delta virus. You're putting other people's, innocent people's lives at risk. You're putting businesses at risk. You're putting at risk the ability to educate our kids by getting them back in person full time.
And it's really interesting how in recent weeks, this has become described as a pandemic of the unvaccinated, where the unvaccinated are described as victims, to the unvaccinated being the ones at fault here for allowing the virus to infect them and then mutate. And now we have a mutated virus called Delta that is extremely contagious. And that's why the situation is worse than it has been since the very beginning. I mean, this Delta variant is twice as contagious as the original strain of the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm. That allows me to fast forward from Monday to today, Friday. A story you covered this morning on KCBS Radio was about the leaked report from the CDC that we're getting a look at the first time, some details. And these are the lifelong medical professionals, the elite doctors, the elite of the elite. And they are sounding alarms. They sound scared about this strain of coronavirus, the Delta variant.
Right. We talked about how contagious it is. And to give you an example, chickenpox. Everybody's familiar with chickenpox because it used to be the childhood illness. Everybody would get it because it's really contagious. And that is about what this Delta version of the coronavirus is. You can get it as easily as chickenpox. The other disease it's being compared to is the common cold. Everybody gets the cold. Well, this coronavirus is just as contagious as the common cold. Not good. So that's why the CDC is looking at this data saying, we got to mask up. We are recommending that if you are in an area with lots of spread, then you should wear a mask indoors, no matter in any public setting, whether it's a church, whether it's a store, whether you're going to work, you should definitely wear a mask because masks have been shown to protect you and protect others around you. And that's also why we're seeing this week a lot of mandates come down, not just for masks, but for vaccines.
Right.
People are being given the option to, it's not a straightforward mandate. You must get the shot in your arm. It's you either get vaccinated or you get tested twice a week. And that's for state employees. That's what the governor's announcement was on Monday. A lot of school districts are now saying either get vaccinated or get tested. And I think a lot of people are now making a lot of the unvaccinated people are having to choose, do I want to continue being unvaccinated or am I going to face this inconvenience of being tested every single week for the foreseeable future?
Sacramento yesterday returned to an indoor mask mandate, not a recommendation, a mandate. It feels like we're inching closer to that, not just here in San Francisco and the Bay Area, but many, many places across the country. But specifically to those of us here in the Bay Area, you think we're getting close to along the lines of a short-term mandate to start wearing masks again indoors?
Oh, absolutely. San Francisco is also considering it. Los Angeles has had an indoor mandate for a while. The word mandate has some connotations. It sounds like a really tough thing to swallow, but really, this is what we've been living with for the last year and a half.
Right. I think all of us kind of learned that there was no mask police. The language and the terminology and how this has all changed, mandate, restriction, recommendation.
I think people don't like being told what to do,
Yeah.
no matter whether you're talking about looking both ways when you cross the street or whether you're wearing a mask. It's part of that American independence streak. But I think that we're at the point where a lot of people are realizing that masks really are a good idea, at least in certain parts of the country. Now, I'm speaking from what I see in the Bay Area. I walk down Market Street in San Francisco. I would say 3 out of 4 people are wearing masks outside. And as we've discussed, Matt, masks outside really aren't necessary because the virus just gets dispersed almost right away. I think that 90% of infections happen inside. So inside, it's a really good idea. But even in San Francisco, people are just wearing them. They go out in public, you're
Right.
wearing a mask. And that seems to be the situation in the Bay Area from what I've seen. Other parts of the country, I talked to some friends who traveled abroad or outside of California. They went from several states. Very different situation. Inside, outside, you just don't see a lot of masks. And those are some of the areas where there's a lot more spread.
I can tell you a firsthand example. Last summer, I was fortunate enough to have been invited to be part of the WNBA bubble. We called it the Wubble down in Bradenton, Florida, as part of my side hustle public address announcer duties for basketball, which I do. And so I was down there for about 3.5 months, and we were pretty isolated. We had to go through a series of symptom checks on an app a couple times a day, temperature checks, obviously daily testing and things like that. So but on a day off, we'd go to Target and stock up on snacks to have in the hotel room and things like that. And this was back again last summer when it was raging. We were in the peak of the worst. You could not tell that there was a global pandemic going on.
Mm-hmm.
We'd get dirty looks, head shakes from people, in my group of folks that we were all masked. This was right when the Major League Baseball season had started up late, and Tampa Bay Rays, very popular down in that area, Bradenton near Tampa and St. Pete. And so you would have thought it was like Game 7 of the World Series on like a Tuesday night in the little bar that was in our hotel lobby. People shoulder to shoulder, clinking their glasses, cheersing, talking loudly, no masks. And it was uncomfortable because, again, coming from a place like San Francisco where everyone was wearing masks in March and was willing to, it was just very different. And it was a stark reminder that, hey, there are parts of this country that view this entirely differently than I do. And then certainly a lot of us in our bubbles out here do. Mm-hmm. Pretty crazy.
It's such a social thing. It's unfortunately a political thing. Yeah. And it's an obvious thing. I mean, you see it on your face right away. And for all of those reasons, there's a lot of opposition to that very public display of what some people consider to be overcautious, others consider to be a very prudent precaution given our current situation.
So you had a chance to kind of talk to folks about mask mandates and kind of take the temperature of people. What was the reaction from San Franciscans that you spoke with?
I think a lot of people just accept that this is where we're going again. I mean, nobody's thrilled about it. We were happy to be unmasking again and feeling safe in public. And there's an awareness that we're taking a step back here. We've maybe taken one step forward and we're taking 2 steps back. And nobody's really comfortable with that, but we do what we have to get through it. I interviewed a couple from Salt Lake City. They just moved to San Francisco. They were outside Twitter's headquarters and they were wearing masks. And they said, we'll do what we have to do because we know it's safe, and B, it is a social thing. It makes people around us feel more safe. And I'll tell you, when I talk to people, even if I'm in an unknown situation, I will have my mask on before I ask a complete stranger for an interview because I don't want them to be scared of my maskless face approaching them and asking them for, a nosy question. That's just the situation we're in.
What I'm really curious about, and I know a lot of folks are worried about, folks with kids, are where are we going to be when school starts? And a lot of companies are now having to revise their return to work plans, given that what we're learning about the Delta variant. And hopefully, as more people come online with that at least first shot of that vaccine, we'll start to see that change. But we just don't know. That's the thing. We don't know. You did a story on Twitter's decision to close its offices here in San Francisco and in New York City. Is that all related to working from home from COVID? And is it temporary?
We don't know. We'll see what happens the next couple of weeks. I'm sure it is temporary. They would like to reopen, of course. Twitter had reopened 2 weeks ago. They were open. Things were returning to normal. And then the Delta variant has surged, and Twitter decided, you know what? Go back home. Go back to couch commuting. The tech companies were really at the forefront of those businesses that shut down early during the first months of the pandemic, probably because they could. It's a lot easier for their employees to work remotely. And now we're seeing them again shut down as the Delta variant surges. Twitter, Google has pushed back its reopening date from September 1st to mid-October. And those companies are also, you mentioned vaccines, those companies are also mandating vaccines. And from what I understand, it's not a either get vaccinated or get tested. It is get vaccinated. When you come back to work, whenever that will be, you must be vaccinated if you are an employee in the United States. You talked about kids.
Right.
I've got a couple of young kids, and they are under 12. They're unvaccinated. And I, as a parent, have been worried about them going back to school and maybe having school employees, teachers, staff, who are also unvaccinated. We know of some unvaccinated teachers at my kids' school. How can they do that? Why can't the school district mandate a vaccine? I interviewed a couple of sources at school districts, and they said legally they cannot mandate this. It's against the law for them to require teachers to get vaccinated. What they can do is what the state is doing, what the federal government is doing, and which is sending the message, either you get vaccinated or you get tested. For example, San Jose Unified announced this week, if vaccinated employees can't show their proof of vaccination, they're going to have to get tested twice a week. And hopefully that will get almost everybody on board before the school year starts here in about a month.
A lot of information to digest. It's been a lot this week. And I was thinking about this earlier, that even for us who kind of live in this news world, sometimes it's like, well, wait a minute, just 2 days ago we heard this and now there's this. And so thanks for helping us keep track of it, Matt.
Absolutely.
For more on these stories and all the latest Bay Area news, stay plugged in at kcbsradio.com and on your mobile devices with the Odyssey app.